thank you for joining us on our second Habitat Live. I'd like to introduce our participants today. On the upper right-hand corner, we have Andrew Brucker, partner at Armstrong Teasdale. The lower left-hand corner, we have Michael DiFonzo, president of Central Construction Management. And on the lower right-hand corner, we have Stephen Varone, president of Rand Engineering and Architecture. So the questions that I have for you are, what happens to exterior and interior work in the age of the coronavirus? And I'll start out with you, Stephen. If you could tell me, are buildings allowing work to go forward on the inside and on the outside?
Well, so far, I mean, it's been
Early days.
It's been changing day to day. So far, we did have one project that was an interior project where they have said that they want work halted. It was a cellar alteration project. I believe the only issues we've had with an exterior project is, I think Michael will confirm, one of his projects, they said no more than they had too many workers gathering on the site. But of course, Michael explained the details on that. But we haven't had any of our jobs, exterior jobs, that have been stopped as of today. We have had somewhat limitations on staff members getting to sites. But other than that, we're still trying to go about with our jobs staying active, especially since most of them on the exterior deal with public safety.
And Michael, have you had any experience with jobs being stopped?
So we've had one experience where the client has asked us to stop working. It was the day that we were actually going to be starting the job. They did not want us to start. Today we had an experience where a client saw that we had more than 20 men on the job site, and they were concerned that we were breaking the 10-person rule. But we explained to them that we are working on facades, we are working on swing scaffolding. Men are wearing personal protective equipment. They have masks, they have gloves, and there's only 2 men on a scaffold. When we have our on-site morning meetings, we stand 6 feet away from each other, and we've been staggering those meetings to keep it to less than 10 people at the meeting. So we've been dealing with the virus proactively. As far as in our office, we've been working from home. As you can see, I am home now, and we've been staggering people who go in and out of the office. Project managers are going to the field from home back home.
Let me ask you, at some point, workers may not be able to come to job sites. Is that a concern of yours, or have you been dealing with that?
So we've had a couple of workers that were not able to come to job sites because of childcare issues. We've also had a couple of workers that are afraid and just don't want to leave their home, and they don't want to come to work. So we've had to close jobs because we have not had the ability to man them safely. So we may have other men that want to work on that job, and then we would just bring them to another job. So we're dealing with this daily. And
what about the supply chain? So you need equipment, or you need nails, or whatever it is that you need for, I guess it's not nails, for exterior renovation. Are you concerned that there will be any interruption in the supply chain? And Stephen, have you seen any of that also?
The only issue in supplies we've had have been the masks, the N95 masks that we use during cutting, pointing, mixing of cement to protect the workers from silica. We happen to have some in our warehouse, but I've spoken to some suppliers and they don't have any. And anybody that does have them, they want an amazing amount of money for them. So it seems like in the next couple of weeks, there will be a shortage of masks if they don't re-up their inventory.
And sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No, Carol, I was just going to go back to the question you asked Steve before. My firm, Armstrong Teasdale, co-op and construction jobs in buildings. Overwhelmingly, the majority of the boards have said there should be no more construction within in the apartments. None. It's very rare that there's a deviation from that. There could be, and in that case, we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. But they don't want workers coming in and out. Now, one of the exceptions might be, for example, if the people.
I think you've just.
It's very possible. It's very possible that if the workers coming in and coming out are properly protected, they may allow it.
So that's interior construction, but you haven't gotten feedback yet for
as far as construction.
It's not you, Mike. I think it's Andy.
We have not interfered with.
Andy, we're just not getting you.
Our unit owners or shareholders.
Okay, so Stephen, let me ask you about the supply chain.
Well, oddly enough, right now, Rand is doing a renovation of its own space, our own 25th Street office, and we're adding a floor. So we're in the midst of that right now, and the contractor is reporting to us that he is having perhaps some delays on delivery of the duct work that needs to go in for the HVAC system. And he also has, well, there's two different sets of subcontractor crews. One set where they have paid sick leave, and many of those are not coming in. And then the other workers who, from another subcontractor that, what I'm being told, do not have paid sick leave, and they all are still coming in. So there's a combined issue of labor and, on that job, some supply issues with delivery of ductwork. I don't know how general that'll become with issues with delivery of materials. I imagine a lot of the jobs already have pre-delivered materials. So, Mike, you're working on a construction job that needs 500 bricks. You already have them at the site. You're not looking for another delivery of that. So there's some time period where we're just going based on what we have, which is similar to Rand's work as well. It's one thing to have my staff mostly working at home for a week or two, because we can be writing reports and writing specs and putting drawings together on things that we've already seen. I think the question becomes when we're not able to make new inspections. There's a point where you wind up with things to write.
So I just want to jump.
It's a safety thing that the exterior work is a different question, say, from someone doing HVAC work, where maybe a safety issue on facades. So it remains to be seen what happens, even if we switch to a shutdown mode in New York City, a full shutdown mode, what that means about sites that are in operation for public safety reasons.
And have you gotten any feedback from the city yet? If any of the reports that, where there are fines that will be instituted if things are not met, whether the city will forego the fines or the deadlines will be extended?
Well, perhaps it's wishful thinking, but my thinking here is that if you have a job that's secured with a sidewalk shed, if you have all your equipment secured so that at the end, just like you would normally do at the end of a workday, that if all that happens, that work can't happen for 1, 2, 3 weeks because of this situation, that it's hard to imagine the city imposing fines or penalties for missing deadlines. I would think all those dates just get extended. So that's also for reports that Rand might be working on, where we have some type of submission deadline to the city. If that deadline can't be made because we can't make an inspection to provide an update, then I wouldn't think, you would have to imagine that those deadlines are going to be extended.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Steve. And keep in mind that the state has already, when it comes to evictions, for example, they've put a stay on all evictions because they realize that this is a crisis. I would not be surprised. In fact, I would bet on it that the city is going to forego violations or fines based on deadlines. It's just not going to happen.
So, Andrew, could you also address, so I know a building enters into a contract with a contractor, let's say for exterior work, and there are penalties if timelines are not met. How should a board look at that or talk to the contractor or the architecture engineer?
Right. Well, typically in a contract, you might have something called liquidated damages. This is the real damages if you're late. We're going to assign a certain amount. So, for example, it could be $500 a day if you don't finish the job. The problem is that I can't finish the job for reasons, beyond his control. For example, if the supply line is cut off, or for example, the city says, you can't have more than 3 workers at a time in any building. If there are reasons for the delay or the postponement of the completion because of issues other than the contractor's fault, then there's something called force majeure, which is in many, many, many contracts. And what it says basically is all bets are off if there's an act of God or something beyond the contractor's ability to stop. So I truly believe that, for example, if and by the way, just so you know, this idea of force majeure has been around for 100 years, and there's also been 100 years of litigation as to what it really means. I can tell you right now that I sit on a committee, 30 co-op and condo and real estate lawyers, and we're all looking into this issue right now. The answer, what I assume is going to happen, is that if the city really does shut down even more, I think what's going to happen is that contractors will not be held to their deadlines, and they will not incur these damages.
Well, you have to remember, it almost sounds quaint when we're talking about it in these circumstances, but typical liquidated damages clause is inserted into a contract just to have a contractor pay attention to that project's completion date versus another project, not because there's some real serious harm that's going to occur if an exterior repair project takes 12 weeks instead of 9 weeks. So in light of the crisis that we're now in, I don't see a lot of boards pursuing a scenario that says, oh, you should have finished in 9 weeks, you took 14 weeks, we're pursuing liquidated damages. And we all know that they were stopped for 5 weeks by this crisis. The other thing is that in a dispute with a contractor and a board over whether liquidated damages should apply, then the engineer architect acts as the arbiter, if you will. And common sense is going to prevail. I don't see an engineer architect saying, oh, yes, this contractor should be penalized because they didn't fight through the coronavirus despite a government shutdown. So I don't really think it's the issue where we should be worried about.
Liquidated damages probably 3 times. That's it. As Steve said, it's really the pitch.
Okay.
That being said, I just want to chime in. I sit as the vice president of the Special Riggers Association, and I wanted you to know that we have a lobbyist that's been in contact with the mayor's office, with DOB, with city council, and we've been proactive with dealing with these agencies because we are an exterior restoration community that is providing, make safe repairs within the city. That being said, though, I agree with Steve. I mean, if a lot of these projects have sidewalk bridges and have equipment and rigging and pipe scaffold that we can continuously check, we can still make this a safe work environment. And the disadvantage to a shutdown would mean that we would have the
you cut out right when you said shutdown.
Okay, what is the disadvantage to the shutdown would mean?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
Mike, you clicked out for a second.
You lost me?
No, you're back. You're back.
The disadvantage to the shutdown would mean what?
We'll never know.
Mike, you're back. You can go ahead and talk. Well, maybe he can't hear us.
He can't hear us.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, back? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You're back.
You're back.
What I was saying was the disadvantage would be the ability to make unsafe buildings safe and continue the inspection process.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to thank you all. I
Right.
appreciate you. Go ahead, Steve.
I just wanted to clarify something about, just to reiterate, the important issue with timelines. The only issues that really we should be worried about have to do with public safety. So
Correct.
basically you have time periods put in effect that the city monitors to see if you're following through on buildings that are in unsafe condition. And in the standard scenario, you have a situation where you have to report back to the city every 3 months to say, well, what's happening with your project? And as long as you're doing that, as long as you're saying things are maintained in a safe condition, you've got protection, then the timeline is basically fluid on how long it takes to correct a condition. So in this type of scenario, you could almost think of it like what we have winter shutdowns where contractors can't work. And you may have a period of 3 months where you're reporting back to the city saying nothing happened because we're in a winter shutdown. But there's protection remains in place and conditions are safe. And so please give us more time. And essentially that's what's going to happen. Every site should be evaluated as to whether, as long as it has adequate site protection while work is not taking place and equipment is properly secured, then there's no reason why you can't get as much time as you need to through this crisis to just extend timelines and act in that manner.
Okay. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate you taking time out and talking to us today. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.